Anthropomorphic animals are aardvarks. Anthropomorphic animals are aardvarks. All right, excellent. Now that I'm vocally and mouthfully warmed up, I am ready to dive in. Shaye, it's been a hell of a 2 weeks. Can't believe it's coming to an end. We've got a lot to talk about. Don't have a lot of time. We talked so much about anthropomorphism, and I was surprised and delighted when our guests in this amazing episode we have in store also brought up this idea of personification being a thing at some of these cons and maybe having its own little, world. There's a term for it that we'll learn in the episode. I can't remember right now, but there's no time to stop and think about it. And I was reminded of a childhood fan favorite, a movie of my youth, a defining cultural moment for young Ian Rowe. Pre-Toy Story, before that wonderful Pixar tale, we had The Brave Little Toaster. Shaye, you said you have never seen this like cultural milestone. You've never dipped your toes in this? Never seen it. Maybe I've heard of it. Don't know what it is. So just to kind of refresh your memory, The Brave Little Toaster is a 1987 American-British animated musical film adapted from the 1980 novel The Brave Little Toaster by Thomas M. Dish, who was Dish himself. I would tap that ass. And I just, so the story is basically, for anyone who hasn't seen it, a young man goes to college, and he leaves behind several appliances, a heated blanket, a table lamp, a vacuum cleaner, and a toaster. And these devices who have been cast aside say, like, this must have been a mistake. We can't be trash. We have feelings. We're alive. We must go find this man who left us to go to college. And they set off across the country to find the man who threw them away like yesterday's garbage. And with a tale so riveting, I mean, as we made our own American version with Toy Story later.
I was going to say, this just sounds like Toy Story. You're describing the plot of Toy Story. Okay.
Exactly, like fucking Pixar. We see you. You are fucking trash. All right? You thought the little toaster was trash? No, Pixar. It is you who are trash. I'm ashamed of you. I just want to see if you could guess how much money you think this movie made in the box office.
Okay, considering I've never heard of it, I'm gonna guess less than $1 million. I'm guessing less than $1 million. Do I get any hints, or you just want me to just throw out a number?
I just kind of want you to use your best judgment,
right.
based on like how well animated films do and don't do. This was 1987. I think wasn't Rambo out in 1987 or something?
All right, I have my guess. $248,000 global box office. Final answer.
That's it's so weird. It's not right, but I like that number.
Okay. What does that mean?
That's just a good number.
Just a good number. All right, cool.
Yeah, so for anyone who's wondering, The Brave Little Toaster made $2.3 million. For all intents and purposes,
wow.
I think
Okay.
that constitutes a box office flop. And, years later, Toy Story found this in the trash, dusted it off, and went, I think we can do this with toys and people will like it. And lo and behold, it became, it became Toy Story. All right, let's go ahead and start this. Just a quick disclaimer for anyone coming in from that cold open. The budget for The Brave Little Toaster was $2.3 million, and the box office was $2.3 million. So it wasn't a flop. It broke even, but I'm still not impressed.
I'm sure that wasn't their goal. They're like, let's waste a year of our time and create whatever this weird piece of movie cinema history is. So we have something different in store for all of you today. Ian and I had the great fortune of speaking to some really amazing furries, big heavy hitters in the furry community. That is, of course, Nuka from furscience.com, as well as Rue and Sammy from For What It's Worth, the podcast. And that's fur with a U. For what it's worth. You can't stop with the fur puns in the furry fandom.
Can't spell furry without you. And that's the greatest, that's the greatest lesson of all.
So we actually had all of them together on one panel, basically. So we had this massive furry panel to kind of guide us back on the path of furry righteousness, so we could learn everything there is to know straight from the first's mouth. I could have done a better, like a horse pun there or something.
No, that was great. I'll let you kind of like think about what exactly you wanted to say while I kind of take us over from here. So I think what Shaye was trying to say was, in part one, I think we did enough misrepresentation of the furry community that I think we decided it would just be best for you to kind of hear it from the. I don't know.
You were going to do it.
Hear it straight from the horse's mouth. Yeah,
you were going to do it.
You planted that seed, you fucker. Yeah, so we just wanted to hear it straight from the furry's mouth. Yeah. We thought it would be best if you heard about the furry community from furries who really, I don't know, like, I really loved that conversation. Like, I had a great time talking to them. Shaye, is there anything you want to add, or should we just cue that up and pop it on?
Yeah, here's us and here's them, and you're gonna like it.
And it's great!
And it's good. It's fine. So we have a panel here before us, and would you guys like to introduce yourself? I know we have Nuka here, if you would like to go first.
Sure. I'm Dr. Courney Plante. I go by the name Nuka in the fandom, and I am a longtime furry and a psychologist who studies the furry fandom.
I'm Rue. I'm from a podcast show called For What It's Worth, where we introduce we introduce people into the furry fandom. And help furries explore the furry fandom itself.
I'm Sammy. I'm also part of For What It's Worth. Being a furry for quite a long time.
Love it. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We have a lot of questions for you, so I'm really hoping you guys can help set us straight. We just finished our first episode, as you know by now, and we came in a little hot. At least Ian did. So, Ian, I'm just curious. Like, how are you feeling in front of the panel of furries here?
Well, it's so funny. Like, after our episode, we never stopped like doing the research, and like I kept, like hanging out online and like watching documentaries and YouTube channels, and like I'm definitely like, it's so weird. It's just like I don't know why I'm so hung up on it. I'm like, okay, it's a fandom of anthropomorphism. Like, okay. I was like, okay. It's like, it's unexpected, but I guess I get it.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because that was when you brought that up, that's something I hadn't really considered. And you, one of the questions that we brought up for you guys was just like, what is there to love about anthropomorphism? Like, why anthropomorphism as a fandom? And is that even like the right question to ask?
I don't know who wants to start on this one.
Go for it, Nuka.
All right. Well, you could ask the same thing about like, if you're a fan of chocolate, why chocolate? Why strawberry? Why Doctor Who? Right? Aesthetics are kind of a weird thing to explain from a psychological perspective. What I can say is that a lot of folks who like furry say that they like it in part because of it's this weird mixture of really cute things. So we tend to find animals very cute. Everyone loves their pet cat or their pet dog and thinks it's the cutest thing in the existence. Combined with this fantasy element, right? So the idea of being a walking, talking animal is different from the humdrum of day-to-day life. Coupled with the self-expressive facet of it, right? So I think even if you're not a furry, you've sometimes had that thought of, if I could be an animal, right? What would be the coolest animal to be, right? So it's that combination, and coupled with the nostalgia of childhood. So much of our childhood is bound up in Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny and the cartoons of yesteryear. So it hits that sweet spot of all of those different things that makes it kind of a fascinating little thing to focus one's attention on.
I was going to say, I think anybody who's being honest with themselves would have to admit that they've had the what animal would I be conversation. Like, I don't know a single person on earth that hasn't given it at least a second's worth of thought.
I think that for myself, it's the ability to be able to take a break from your life. You get an opportunity, you go to work, you put on a mask. You run a podcast show, you put on a mask. You can't, I don't know. For myself, I'm a different person outside of podcasting, and I'm also a different person at work. There's certain things that are okay in the workplace, and there's certain things that aren't okay, like wearing fuzzy ears and a tail at work. guys, it's not professional. So I would highly recommend you not wearing a tail and ears. And in fact, I don't know, my personal feelings is when you go to school, you're there to learn. That's not the place to wear your ears and tail. But that is my personal opinion. So for myself, it gives me an opportunity to jump out of my life into something that is completely different of what I would like to be or to become. So I've been able to set up my own basically fursona as this is my ideal self. I want to be a happy-go-lucky fox that loves cookies and is friends with everybody, and it gives me that ability to jump into that particular role, but then it helps me to be able to implement it into my true life and be that more happy-go-lucky person in my life itself. So it gives you that opportunity to be able to rework yourself a little bit.
That's cool. I like that. How about you, Sammy?
Yeah, I mean, I feel a lot. I kind of fall under the same mindset with Nuka, but it's a nice way to get out of your head, get out of your worries, and then a lot of us do. A lot of us have started with the cartoons. We all watched Disney growing up. We all watched, especially our generation, Looney Tunes, Mickey Mouse, all of those. And that's what we connected with. We found our joy in those animals, instead of maybe, other things. So
You touched on something there, especially something you said, Rue, that it didn't make sense to me at first, but then a little bit when I dove into it, the more I realized this idea of trying on a different hat for a moment. And that's kind of what. So I turned a corner pretty quick in this experience. I was I think furries are weird. That was my going into it. I'm pretty sure
we
said
agree that furries are weird.
They are.
Yeah. So I was this is weird. I'm not sure how I feel about it. But then the more I thought about it, and I guess when I first heard the idea that this is an opportunity to try on a different hat and kind of play in it, in the very human sense of the word play, and kind of enact and do the role playing as well. I was this might actually be very therapeutic for a lot of people, to try out this kind of thing. I feel there's probably a lot of similarities in LARPing, or maybe even Dungeons and Dragons to some extent. I've never done either of those, but that's at least how I've seen it. So it's been really interesting for me. I know Ian is still. I don't know, Ian. Do you still see it that way? Because I know it felt like you had some pushback on that idea, and I remember you mentioned, and I just want to see how you're feeling about it now. If it felt like Arrested Development still. I just wanted to throw you under the bus here. Now that we have this whole panel,
I feel and here's the thing as well too. It's I'm very aware that with any sort of criticism, you're kind of telling on yourself, right? So when that's the thing that you kind of latch on to, it's a little bit well, I don't get to do that. What do other people? So it's yeah. It's so funny. I haven't thought about that since we started talking about it initially. So I'm going to do something different. I'm not going to keep us here lingering on it. Let me think about it, and then I'll pop it in the middle of the episode. And we'll edit it in so it sounds like I answer it right away. But what would you all have to say to that about this idea of it being Arrested Development? Would you agree that there's some element of that? Do you think that's an unfair criticism? Would you maybe counter with what's the difference between me doing that and you getting blackout drunk and falling down a flight of stairs after a Celtics game,
or playing video games, or any of the other fandoms that are really popular.
Yeah.
You pretty much took the words out of my mouth there. So I study fan cultures more broadly, so not just furries, but other recreational pursuits, other fan cultures, video game playing, that sort of thing. And my answer is very much that. I say we all fantasize, we all, to some extent, engage in pretense and what if I was a different person in a different world? We all do that to some extent. It's just for some of us, we formalize it more. For some of us, it's more mainstream. I mean, Hollywood is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and what is it if not going to a giant room, turning off the world for a couple of hours, and imagining what would it be like to be John Wick, right? Or many of us play video games, and it's the same thing, right? You play a first person shooter, you are in that mindset. And so we all do it to some extent. It's just we kind of cock an eyebrow at certain ones when that's not how I would do it. So that's a little bit strange.
Yeah, honestly, it's like, and this is it's funny because I mean, this is again like the whole purpose of our show is to be like, all right, where is this bias? Like, where is this conception coming from? And like my, like I keep like a log of like the feelings that pop up because I'm just like, this is interesting. Like, where's this coming from? And one of the things that you mentioned about the movies and the video games is like, well, it's like, I guess like the argument would be like, well, those are kind of cool. Like in a video game, it's like I'm like shooting aliens in the face with a bazooka, and like in the movies, it's like, I don't know. It's like Goku fighting Frieza. I don't know why that's not a movie I saw recently at all. But it's just like I guess like I'm like, okay, like what's cool? Like what's the cool aspect of dressing up as what I was viewing as like a stuffed animal? And I mean, like I'm sure I know that's not what it is, but like initially, like the first couple of days of thinking about it, it's not like, all right, well, like movies are cool, bro, but like you can't like just what do you dress up as a panda? Like that's not as cool.
So a couple of counterpoints. The first counterpoint would be that you can watch movies for a lot of reasons, right? Like, so certainly you can go to see a movie for cool purposes, but you can also see a movie for, there are rom-coms, there are, comedies, right? Sometimes you go to see a movie to laugh at something, or to just watch something that just is nice and pleasant to watch. Second of all, though, I think a lot of furries would say that some of the things they like are objectively cool, right? So mix elements of furry with cyberpunk, right? There's a whole bunch of cyberpunk themed furry art. Hey, what's cooler than being in a dystopian cyberpunk future? Well, doing that, but you're also a werewolf, right? Or doing that, but you got big badass claws, right? Or you got some kind, cat-like reflexes or something. So we're sort of debating over the aesthetics of what's cool to one person or another. But I think that a lot of furries would say, no, the thing, the species I chose or the aesthetic I prefer is cool.
And that is an argument even the furries make between themselves of what are the cooler fursonas than the other fursonas,
Very true.
Yeah,
tons of furry drama.
My special thing is so much better than your normal canine. Oh,
right.
Than your vanilla, yeah.
I'm a hybrid fox / wolf / fish thing. And it's amazing.
I was gonna ask. I was like, I want to know more about the furry drama because like that's something that's like we watched two kind of documentaries that I feel like we're a little bit at odds with each other. I feel like one portrayed Sam Conway as like the savior of the furry movement, and then the other one was like Sam Conway is censoring us and stopping us from being ourselves, and then it portrayed him as like this like Trumpian figure in the furry movement. So it's like, I kind of want to know, if you guys don't want to answer this because you don't want to throw people under the bus, that's totally fine. But like, who are like the worst kinds of furries to you guys? Like, like that guy, like I'm a wolf hybrid and I have laser shoot out of my eyes. You guys like, come on, man.
The way I see it is anytime you get a group of people together, no matter what their interests are or how similar they relate to each other, there's gonna be drama. It's just the way of people.
Any fandom has drama.
Yeah, every fandom has drama. Anime fans have drama. Star Trek fans have drama. Football fans have drama. I mean, my team's better than your team. I don't know. They all look the same to me. People are drama. What the drama is does change based on where you are and who you're around. But there's going to be drama no matter what.
Our drama's just my fox is better than yours. Just kidding.
Yeah.
As a general rule, for the research that I've done on drama in fandoms, and believe it or not, there are published articles on drama across fandoms.
Read those.
But one of the things that we've noticed, not just in furries, but we also study anime fans, we studied bronies, we studied Star Trek fans, we studied fan fiction writers. And there are a few things that kind of generally emerge as drama bait or things that you come across a lot. Typically, when a fandom is very diverse and there's a lot of different people from different perspectives all existing in the same space, you're going to have whatever arises in society whenever people of different politics, different religions, different cultural backgrounds will bump into, right? So the furry fandom, very open and inclusive, which means you're going to have at a furry convention conservatives brushing shoulders with liberals, brushing shoulders with atheists, brushing shoulders with devout Catholics, and you're going to get the normal friction that you have anytime you throw people into the mix. In terms of fandom specific stuff, drama often arises, for example, when people have disagreements about the image, the ideal of what the fandom should look like. So if you want to go back to the Sam Conway stuff, right? Yeah. Different perspectives about what the fandom is and ought to be will lead people to have, conflicting positions. If you think the fandom should be this, and if it's fulfilling this function for you, but someone else says, no, the fandom is fulfilling a different function for me, you're going to be at odds, whether you're in the anime fandom, in the furry fandom, in the brony fandom, in the Star Wars fandom. These are nothing that we found suggests that it is unique to furries. It's just that when it happens to furries, people point and laugh a little more.
I think the one thing that's a little bit different that I see is that we don't have an identity. Like, for instance, Marvel, Marvel can be like, this is what it is. And, they set the rules or something like that. Or Comic-Con can be like, this is, I don't know. But the fandom doesn't really have a figurehead. Although there is people that self-proclaim themselves as the figurehead. As you guys probably already know.
We would say that the furry fandom is decentralized, right? In the Star Wars fandom, one company or one group of people gets to decide what is and isn't canon, and therefore what the rules are. Whereas in the furry fandom, there are thousands of small independent artists. There's no one agreed upon rules. So even something simple like what species ought to count. Should dragons count because they're technically scaly and not furry, right? These are the kinds of things that come up when no one's calling the shots, when there's no furry government.
No overlord.
Yeah.
30-year-olds or anybody 30-year-old plus is not welcome in the fandom.
Is that a controversy? Like, yes. Is that a thing that people talk? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why? What's the argument there?
So
that we're too old.
What?
And we shouldn't be going to cons and stuff and participating.
We shouldn't be getting into animal costumes. That's weird when you're 30 plus.
So we've done research on ageism within the fandom as well. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm very know-it-all here.
No, you were so good. You were so good. You're good.
We've recently did research on a couple thousand furries asking about these sorts of generational differences because the fandom's been around for decades at this point. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, for furries who are just getting it into it today, why do they sort of look weirdly at the older furries? And for the older furries, why do they look weirdly at the younger furries? And a lot of the discrepancies that you see are, again, the same kinds of culture clashes you're finding in the general populace. So things like the older furries saying the younger furries are too woke, they're too politically correct, they're too concerned with cancel culture. The younger furries are saying these older furries, like they're not with it. They don't understand social media. They don't understand the shows and things that are popular today. They're too stuck in their own ways, and the fandom has changed and they haven't changed with it, right? They're very cliquish. And so these are not, you've probably heard these same arguments happening on any Facebook argument or any Twitter argument for any context, right? Whether we're talking about people in the workplace, right? Boomers fighting with millennials and Gen Xers and stuff over, generational differences. The furry fandom just it's a microcosm for that much bigger cultural problem.
I have a quick follow-up to that. And this is, I guess, directed at everyone. How long have you all been in the fandom, and how much has it changed since you entered?
I've been in the fandom officially since 2007.
Wow.
So it's, I don't know.
14 years?
Yeah, like long time. When I joined, I mean, yeah, we still had the internet. Didn't have Facebook or anything like that. A lot of our online interactions, especially locally, were through Yahoo groups.
Yep.
Other than that, it was message boards, chat rooms, that kind of stuff. It's definitely a lot more, I want to say, accessible, in that it's easier to communicate with each other now. It's easier to go on Google and say, oh, I mean, I'm in Utah, so Utah Furries or Utah Furry Group, and you can Google it and basically find the local group. Whereas before it was you had to know somebody who could tell you where
It's
to
if you have a
go.
mailing list.
Yeah,
Oh
you
my
had
God.
you had to find each other, and then they go, okay, you go here to this site, you message this person, we meet here at this time on this day of the month, come down, that kind of thing. Now
A
it's like,
super
oh, I
secret
can go,
fandom.
I can go on Twitter and find, 500,000 other furries, and it's easy. So.
Another big difference is just how much furries have embraced technology. Again, whether you're comparing from the 80s to the 90s to the aughts to the 10s, furries are typically very up on technology. Furries are a bunch of nerds and geeks. And so with the 90s, right, you had furries using all these online groups, right? And, things like Mucks, these online, Mucks is going to date me here. But, being very much into that sort of thing. Then with the
You're such a gray fur, Nuka.
and with the 2000s, you get, like I said, groups and online forums and stuff. With the 2010s, I'm noticing it's a lot of social media. Furries have embraced social media. The furry Twitter is a thing. There are furry YouTubers. Like I'm encountering in our research more and more furries who say, I got into it because I found a furry YouTuber, which 15 years ago was not a thing. And so the fandom, if there's something that's changing with the fandom, it's just that as technology changes, furries go along with it.
It has seemed like, even from just a little bit of Reddit research and Reddit groups that I've seen, that even the animation seems very technology forward. Like I haven't seen anything hand drawn at all. It seems like it's all like digital art representations or like digital renderings. Is that fair?
It's still there, but there are definitely, we've seen it in our own work. There's a greater valuation of digital work. And if you talk to artists in the fandom, they'll say, there's just less demand for drawn artwork by a factor of about 3 to 1. There's less demand for physical artwork than there is for drawn artwork, which
that's fascinating.
30 years ago was just not a thing.
I think a big thing right now that's happening is because VR has just kind of exploded a little bit in the fandom, and what's going on now is everybody, like a lot of furries, are getting into VR chat, and they're jumping into VR there so that they can literally be their fursona selves, but not have to wear a carpet on top of you. So
that's fascinating. That's kind of like Second Life or something like that. It feels like you're having an avatar, but just a furry avatar.
Furries were very much on Second Life.
Yeah, I just call it fancy Second Life.
Pretty much, I'm the same.
Well, it's funny too, because we I don't know if you guys listened to part 1, but we kind of ended the episode of part 1 on that note. This idea that I think as we kind of move more and more to this virtual space, the furry thing might become more and more ubiquitous. Is we're well, I could be and do anything. I could fly. I could go 10,000 feet under the ocean. Why would I want to keep my experiences limited to this corporeal form? Yeah, exactly. It's
well, you guys watched Ready Player One, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely no problems with it.
Well, the other thing with the online is, 2020, all the conventions were cut off. Our regular social interactions that we, are big things for us, because it's really the only time we see some of our friends, because they live on different parts of the country, different parts of the world, where have you. The furries flocked to VR, to these online spaces, and have, in a way, kind of pushed it even further. Now we're doing online conventions, we're doing, Zoom conventions and VR parties and all that kinds of stuff. It's one of those, I feel like furries are very industrial in the way of, if we can't physically go and do, we will find a way to go and do.
Well, and norms have changed dramatically, because there are, when you think about it, for the last year and a half, we've all been under lockdown, and there have been virtual conventions. There are furries who have been furries now for a year and a half, just got into the fandom, and they don't know anything except virtual conventions. And that's absolutely going to play an impact going forward.
I have
the shape
never
of the
thought
furry
of
fandom.
that. Wow. I think that for me, what's been hard about the pandemic is like not being able to go out into suit to a public event. So I help run a charity called Helping Paws, where we go around to charity events like Strut Your Mutt or the Cure Search Walk, and we get together to help those organizations raise money for their charities. And that is like not being able to do that. It's like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like, I don't know. It's so like, so helping out with some of those charity events. I've had times where some people have came up to me, like this lady that was in a wheelchair that, you know, she just like pulled me in, and I was in suit, and she gave me a great big hug, and she just whispered into my ear, "Thank you so much for, you know, being here and helping us, just helping me to smile for a day." And I that's what furry brings to me, at least, or, you know, jumping into a fursuit just to be able to make somebody smile and bringing a little bit of happiness to their life, and being able to help people in that way. Because I feel like that sometimes in life we take things so serious and we forget to have a little bit of joy and a little bit of fun. So
That's interesting. Yeah, you know, one of the questions I was thinking about when I was wondering about furry fandom generally is like what you do really get out of it. And you know, I it's interesting that you mentioned charity, because I feel like we've seen in the little bit of research we've done so far just a lot of charity, like talking about charities. Like I think Anthrocon donates a portion of its proceeds to animal charities and stuff like that. Is that the main appeal, or maybe a better question is, what is the main appeal? Like what has maybe a better question, what has being a furry taught you? Like, what have you learned from being a furry? Maybe that's the best question.
So I'm going to jump in and just say that to each person, we're going to have a different answer here. This is up to each person's own interpretation. One thing that, I mean, me explaining what furry means to me is going to be 100% different to somebody else.
Right.
But to answer your question, I kind of already answered it. It's being able to escape from the serious life and being able to, you know, spread a little bit of joy, have a little bit of happiness, and jump in. And I'm not saying that you can't have happiness in your own life, because it's important for you to be able to have that happiness as well. It's just, it's like Clark Kent putting on that superhero cape, you know, and just jumping out for just a moment in time.
Yeah, I mean, I second Rue on the you know, you ask. I heard it. Maybe it was on the Fandom documentary or on another one, but I heard it. Someone say, if you ask 10 furries what the fandom means to them, you're gonna get 11 answers. So,
I love that.
Yeah, for me, furry is. I mean, it started out as a, you know, I started out in the anime fandom. I did that for years and years before I found furry. But even then, I still made characters. I still was finding other ways to kind of, again, find other things that made me happy, because the world around me at the time didn't make me happy. And as I got older, it was a great way of like self-exploration. I'm a transgender man. I started my transition back in 2017. I was actually able to explore my gender, my sexuality, how I feel about myself, what makes me feel good, what makes me feel happy about myself through furry, through my fursona, because I could do those things and I could put them, you know, on a screen, on a piece of paper, in my mind, saying, this is who I want to be. This is what's making me happy, and it really actually helped me open doors to my life. Not only because I was my own experiences, I was able to meet people who had other experiences, who opened my eyes, who taught me things, and I had gone, man, if I had known this, 5-10 years prior, my life would have been different. So it's a lot, and at the end of the day, it's just something that makes me happy, helps me, get through the tough days, helps me be able to take a break mentally and kind of reset myself and get back into life. The job I have is difficult. It's taxing mentally, very mentally. I work as an animal control officer for my city. And there's some days where, I get home and I'm just like, I can't. And I can, go off, find my friends, chat with them. It's a great community. It's given me such a support group that I'd never had before. So it's a lot.
Well, I would say that's the operative thing right there. So again, in our research, we studied thousands of furries and asked them almost exactly what you said. Like, what do you get out of this? What's the primary motivation? And you see the kinds of things you'd expect to see. Okay, well, we like the show and self-expression and creativity. But the number one answer that comes up again and again is the social component to it. The fandom would not be what it is if it was a bunch of people watching cartoons and drawing arts by themselves in their basement without ever talking to one another. It's that social component that makes fandoms, not just the furry fandom, but other fandoms, what they are. It's the social support. It's the opportunity to be who you want to be and have it validated by other people who have a similar interest to you. Many furries have a long history of being bullied or picked on or ostracized, or just not really feeling like they fit in. And for many of them, they'll describe the fandom as this is kind of the first place where I just kind of clicked. You take for granted the fact that if you're a sport fan, you're surrounded by a society of like-minded people who you can go watch games with, talk about the scores with. But, if you're a furry, sort of floating around in high school and like, I have this weird interest. I don't think anyone else likes the thing that I like. When you finally find like-minded people and it just kind of clicks, you're like, yes, I'm no longer the weird one. Now I'm part of a group of weird ones, but we're a group, so it's kind of okay.
Yeah.
We're the other category.
What's so interesting about that is like one of the thoughts I was having about this is it does really feel like an outsider community. Like I know Ian even thought that like the point of it at the onset, I don't know, maybe he still feels this way. The point of it at the onset was to be kind of outside of the community. And I'm wondering, like,
I'd like to celebrate, not to like maybe be like remove oneself, but to be like, I guess like to celebrate those differences and be like, yeah, like fuck mainstream society. Like this is way more interesting or fun.
And I'm wondering, like, do you think that like that being outside of the mainstream in general, like this kind of like we're all in this together mentality is like what makes this community what makes it seem to be such a welcoming community? Is it because it's kind of an us versus them, like in group kind of like welcoming attitude?
Yeah, so we actually published a paper. We published a lot of papers. I'll just stop prefacing everything. We published a paper.
No, please keep it up. I want to know what I can look up afterwards.
But yeah, so we published a paper on this exact subject, or something very similar to this, showing that it is in fact the research suggests that typically people cling to in-groups that help them to feel good about themselves. And there's this weird anomaly that happens around stigmatized groups, right? So we want to be part of a group that makes us look good and feel good. But by that logic, we shouldn't want to be a part of groups that are stigmatized, right? If a group is heavily stigmatized, why would you want to be part of it? And that's the funny paradox of furries and other, again, anime fans, heavily stigmatized fandom, right? So there's an identity to be had in being the outsider, in being the weird ones. Think of all the art students who in high school, they sat on the corner and they reveled in the fact that they weren't mainstream, reveled in the fact that we have this identity. It's almost like flipping the script. Like you're going to spend your whole time making fun of us, picking on us. Well, we're going to turn around, sort of, jujitsu, and redirects that momentum into an identity that makes us cooler than you, right? I don't think furries think they're cooler than anyone else, but we're going to redirect it into something that we think is very cool, and we're going to embrace the idea of being weirdos and freaks, and that's okay because we're all in this together.
I really relate to that, like in high school, feeling like just like I was like, alternative or like punk or something like that. And I mean, to a much lesser degree, I had that mentality as well. I was like, screw all those normies and the preppy kids. Like, I'm gonna listen to System of a Down, and that's gonna make me such a cool outside kind of guy. I feel like that's almost like a minor version of kind of what you're describing here, because like here, like, to put on a fursuit, I don't know if like what the minimum qualification is to be like a furry, but at least like on one extreme or maybe, like one level of involvement, to put on a fursuit, that's clearly like an indicator to like the entire outside world. It's like, no, I'm very serious about my passions here. I guess like one question is like, what is like the main thing that makes you a furry? If you say you're a furry, are you a furry? Is it the fursuit? Do you have to have a fursona to be a furry?
So my compatriots speak first.
Yes, I get to talk. No, I'm just kidding, Nuka. I'm just kidding. Okay, so I would 100% say that you definitely do not have to have a fursuit in order for you to become a furry. A lot of people think that they need to have a $3,000 suit in order for them to be able to be part of this exclusive club. But no, you don't. You just need to come as you are. There are some people in the fandom that don't have fursonas. However, it is very rare. Like, for example, we have I'll use Boozy Badger as an example. Boozy Badger was a lawyer that was interested in learning about furries. And so he basically got in there. He just got kind of interested in it, and everybody just kind of gave him a fursona, and then he just kind of rolled with it. And now he's just known as Boozy Badger, and that's how he identifies himself as. So he just kind of fell into that particular fursona. So, I mean, I know that you guys are wondering, like, how does somebody become part of this fandom? Is that correct? Like, how do you get into this club? Do you have to have a fursona, or do you not have to have a fursona? And honestly, my answer to that is come as you are. Like, we're welcome. Our arms are basically outstretched to you. If you feel like that you're that weird other outside cast, there's a community out there for you, and we're welcome to have you.
I'm basically on the same as Rue is, the fursonas are nice. Honestly, a lot of people jump in saying, well, I'm a furry. I want to be a furry. They don't have a set goal in mind. When I started, I went, okay, I want to make a fursona. What do I want to do? And then it was, okay, message boards. Let's go talk to people. Let's, talk to other people. How did you find your fursona? What do you like about, what made you choose such animal? That kind of stuff. And, a lot of people come in going, well, I don't know what I want to do yet, but I know I want to do it. So let's just, go for it. And that's as it is, come, talk, meet. That's we all just want to socialize and have people that we can relate to. So
a majority of time, people choose their first fursona as, I don't know, some maybe wolf called Kiba or something. I don't know, just throwing something out there.
No, wolf named Shadows.
They come up with something, and what happens a lot of times is they're like, you know what, this thing that I created isn't for me, and they change it to what they actually want. It would be interesting to see research on how many times that people change.
We've got data on that.
Their persona.
Q Nuka.
Yeah. I love the question you had asked, by the way, because so the question being, what makes you a furry or not? Because the most frequently how I am asked that question is by students. I teach big, large classes of like 400 students, and they'll ask me afterwards, am I a furry? I liked The Lion King. Am I a furry? And it's a lot of like very scared people going, oh shit. So I put their mind at ease and say, don't worry, you're probably, if you have to ask the question, you're probably not a furry, right? Your grandmother thought Lion King was very cute. Your grandmother's not a furry. Typically what we say is, treat it like any other thing, right? So treat it like being a sport fan. I can go watch a hockey game. I'm Canadian. So I can go watch a hockey game and not necessarily call myself a hockey fan, right? Oh, it was a fun game and stuff. But the clincher for us, at least in our psychological research, is, do you like this thing enough that it's a significant part of who you are, that you feel comfortable telling people, hey, my liking of this thing will tell you a lot about me, people I hang out with, the kinds of hobbies I do, how I spend my time and my money and my free time. So if you like it enough that it becomes a central core part of who you are, then you're probably getting into furry territory. But like with being a fan of anything, there's no physical marker of it, right? It would be like saying the only sports fans are the ones who own jerseys, right? You piss off a lot of sports fans by saying that, or the only sports fans are the ones who make it to every game in the season, right? With furries, we can say that about 25% of furries owns a fursuit. Right, so obviously you can't define it by that. We know that about 95% of furries creates a fursona, right? So that's one of the more universal things. But even so, you've got about 5% of furries who don't have a fursona but would call themselves a furry. So there's no one behavior or one possession or thing you do that makes you furry. It's sort of a label that you either decide or don't decide to apply to yourself.
There's two different types of furries. Oh. There's a furry lifestyler. And then there's a furry hobbyist. So there are some people that are there that this is just a hobby to them, just like, I don't know, Pokemon trading cards or something like that. Please don't go to Target and ransack them. I appreciate that. Or, there could be, then there's lifestylers that this is their life. They portray themselves online, that this is, it's them 100%. All of their friends call them by their fursona name. Even when they go out in public and order a pizza, they say, "Hey, my name is Rue," instead of like my real legal name. Stuff like that. So I would have to say that I identify more as a lifestyler, and I feel like that a majority of us here are lifestylers, but I don't want to speak for other people. So.
As a person whose research is inextricably tied to his furry identity, I don't think I can avoid the fact that I am a professional furry.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
I was like, I think the fursona to me was the thing that like most interested me. And I know we're kind of like harping on the fursona a little bit, but this was the aspect to me that I was like most intrigued by. I was like, because when I first learned, when I first thought I knew anything about furries, like I think like a lot of people, and we've had several people reach out to us since the release of our episode, and they were like, we also thought this was just a sex thing. Like we had no idea that it was like community based, and like there was this like fursona aspect, and like I was also a little dismayed. I was like, oh shit, this is some people's first time learning about this, and they're learning about it through me and Shaye. That's not good. Well, the good news is they'll listen to part 2 and they'll hear what you guys have to say.
You know what? But I have to validate you guys 100%. Yeah. I listened to part 1 and you did an amazing job at portraying it.
I'd rather that than them hearing about it from CSI.
We don't talk about that anymore, Nuka. We're past that. No, I listened to it all while I was working today, and I gotta say with Rue, there's a couple points I was like, ooh, this is a little rough, but overall, I think you guys did a fantastic job just based off of your own watching YouTube, going on Reddit. I think you guys did fantastic, so don't worry too much.
Well, Sammy, I think you kind of answered or like gave me the best impression of what it's like to like make a fursona. Because I was like, is it like an instant thing? You're like, oh, like I like this, I'm going to do this, or it was like I think the analogy is that is it like picking your health insurance? Like, do you compare other plans?
I think it depends on how you want to do it. As Drew said, a lot of people, when they start out, because as you guys were saying in the first episode, man, there's a lot of wolves, there's a lot of generic dogs, a lot of mammals, a lot of people start with what they know. Most of us grow up with pets. We've grown up with dogs, cats, hamsters. It's what you see in the zoo, the common animals are what people tend to start with. And then, some of us will stick with that. I started as a dog. I started as a mixed breed lab, German Shepherd, Pembroke Welsh Corgi. That was my first. As the years went, I cut it down to just a Corgi. I'm just a Corgi. Some people will start out with their, I'm a gray wolf. That's where they start because they saw the wolves in the zoo. They've watched wolf documentaries. It's what they saw. It's what they know. And then, I like wolves because they have packs. They have this, that, whatever.
Yeah.
And then as things go on, they could say, I don't really identify with that anymore. I don't feel like that's me, or, whatever their reasoning is behind it. And they'll change it.
I'm curious, when they do change it, is it because when you change it I'm having a tough time phrasing this question. It seems like some people do have like multiple fursonas. Like, and you were mentioning how it's changed over time. Yeah. Is it that you create a new one and you can kind of maybe like embody both at the same time? Or do people have one fursona that adapts and changes over time? Or can someone have several?
I would say 100% yes. As far as like being able to, with your fursona, people tend to have like a certain aspect that they are interested in. Like, I want to be more charismatic, and this is what my fursona is. And, sometimes it gets to the point where they're like, you know what, I've gained that particular skill. I'm a charismatic person now. And, this fursona doesn't necessarily fit me anymore. And maybe they choose something else that's like, man, I really, really want to be a muscle husky or something like that. I don't know. Something.
Is that a term?
I want to be physically fit.
Muscle fur, yeah.
And muscle fur is a thing.
A muscle fur is a term. Yep.
Oh, I love that.
Those are your beefcakes kind of guys, typically.
I would say it depends in part on the function that the fursona serves for you. So why did you create your fursona in the first place? For a lot of people, it's this hugely significant thing. So it's something I put a lot of thought into, and I chose this particular species because it has this personal significance to me, either spiritual or I grew up with this animal, and so it just makes sense to me, or it's got some traits that perfectly represent my personality. And then there are other furries who are like, dogs are kind of cool, let's go with that. And what you'll tend to find is for the furries for whom it's much more deep and significant a part of them, they'll tend to change in a very gradual fashion if they change at all. About 50% of furries have only ever had one fursona and it's never changed. When they do change, it tends to be in this slow, gradual fashion. In part because personality doesn't change very quickly. You don't go from being an extrovert to an introvert overnight. But over, especially before the age of about 25, your personality it can change, right? Facets of yourself can change dramatically. And so in that sort of developmental period, you're playing around and saying, maybe that thing that I started out as 15 years ago isn't quite clicking anymore, so I'll change. But it's usually in this gradual fashion. Maybe you tweak your fursona until you realize at some point, it'd be easier if I just started from scratch again, right? Or I'm basically a wolf. I'm messing around with a dog, but let's face it, I'm a wolf. Let's just take the plunge.
And I can speak on the multiple fursonas or multiple characters
because you have tons.
I don't have tons.
Yes, you do. You have
3.
You have too many.
I have 3. Mister, I'm just a fox and that's all I need in my life.
Exactly.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much.
No. Yeah, so Sammy, the corgi, is my main fursona. He's the one that's me. That's just my day-to-day kind of, what I am. I have two others. One is a platypus, but he is also a plush. So like your teddy bears, you're big, squishy, super chill.
You push just a little bit and he falls right over.
Yeah. And, super cuddly, just wants to hang out kind of guy. And then I've also got a bull character I've been working on. I haven't actually solidified a name for him yet. But he's more of what I call my grumpy side, my angry side. He's more of the, bullheaded kind of. That's part of why he's a bull as well. Because I can be stubborn and bullheaded and a bit of an asshole. And that I feel like that's that part of me. So it kind of depends. Some people, all they need is one, and that's it. Some of us, we like to play with, well, if I want to encompass this part of myself, or even if it's, make a whole different character altogether. They could say, well, this is my main guy, but this is who I have if, I want that extroverted guy. I want that super social guy. That's who that is, but this is me behind him kind of thing. Yeah. So it all depends on what you want, what you're looking for.
Well, I think it's just really enjoyable because it's a performance, right? You get to go out and be that particular person. So it's nice. Again, I'm going to say escapism, I guess. It gives you that ability to be that particular emotion. And I feel like I'm sounding like Inside Out here. The movie, but it gives you that ability to be that particular character. You get to be that character, and it gives you, I guess it just gives you an excuse. So for Sammy, it gives Sammy an excuse to be an asshole. So
sometimes you need to be.
Yeah, just to be able to get that out so that you're able to not be an asshole in real life. Or maybe to learn to be more of one. If you need a little bit more of confidence to show, like, to say, no, this is not okay, or, just to be able to help you in your own life to show more assertiveness, that can help somebody that may not have that particular confidence.
I feel like Sammy kind of answered this next question in advance, but feel free to add on to it if there's more you want to say. But I guess maybe this is I don't know if this is too personal a question to ask a furry. You'd be like, that is the forbidden furry question. You cannot ask that.
Furries of nothing are open to a fault.
Hey, I this is, I guess, more I don't know which level of intimacy, but what do your fursonas tell us about you? What does your fursona say about you?
That's actually not something I've ever thought of.
Well, it's time to think about it, Sammy.
Hot seat time.
Yeah.
With Sammy, because Sammy is what I always tell people is me. But it's also a part of. There's also a reason why he's a corgi. Not just because I love the dog breed. Their personality traits I see in myself. They can be stubborn, and they're also, it's weird. Because corgis are herding dogs. They're bred and raised to herd cattle and sheep and that kind of thing. And I find myself doing that. If I'm in a group, I'm very much come on, let's go. Let's do this. Let's all move over here now. We said we were leaving. We're gonna leave. So I see myself in the traits of the animal, and that's kind of where that led into why I stuck with that. It started as I love corgis. They're great. I've always loved them since I was little. So let's just start there. And then as I got older, I went, that's me. And that's just how it worked.
The question's a great one too, because from our own work, we found that when you ask furries, hey, does a person's fursona tell you something about them? Like, regardless of whether it's true or not, when you find out someone's a cat or a dog or a dragon, do you think you've learned something about them? And furries overwhelmingly say yes. Now, they don't tend to discriminate against one another on the basis of that. They never say, oh, cats piss off. I don't associate with cats. But they do pay attention to those things, right? So if you've chosen a blue husky, right, I, as a furry watching you, will make at least some assumptions about you. I'm going to say, okay, so you chose a husky. So you chose a fairly popular fursona species. You chose blue, which is a fairly typical color. So I'm going to start trying to pay attention to things about you in the same way that people do this in day-to-day life. If I see you walking up to me wearing a Hawaiian shirt, I'm going to assume a little bit about your personality. You're kind of laid back. You're kind of, if the first impression that you make with me is that you're wearing a suit and tie, I'm going to assume something else about you. Furries do that with fursonas as well. So I think your question's a good one, because that's, whether furries realize it or not, they do that.
Yeah. Wait. Was that a deflection though?
That was a deflection. You didn't say anything about yourself.
I was like, well, that's a good. Wait a minute, that's not what we asked.
I almost got away with it. So if you're asking about my fursona, is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, what did your fursona say about you? It's like, it was personal question.
I'm a super boring furry. My fursona is a blue cat in a lab coat. It is a blue cat in a lab coat because I like cats. It is blue because I'm colorblind, and blue is one of the few colors I can see. It wears a lab coat because I'm a scientist, and his name is Nuka because I shamelessly stole the name from a webcomic character whose name was Nuka.
Here's what I think it says about you. Okay, like you understand. Like, hey, life is complicated. Let's simplify things a bit. Okay, I like
analyzing the psychologist. I love it.
I can see this color, and I got a lab coat because I'm a scientist. Yep. Boom, done. Persona over.
But it's a good demonstration of the fact that there's a wide range. Like, for some furries, they inject backstories and history and significance to every little marking and spot, and for others, cat seems fine. Good enough.
All right, how about you, Rue?
Well, I'm Rue. Yay! I'm a lovely little fox.
Visual.
Wait. Who told me? No one told me we were doing show and tell.
I'm show and tell because I can. We see all your fursuits back there, okay?
I see them, Sammy.
We see the thousands of dollars that you have back there.
Flexing
I could have bought a nice car with all that money.
So here is my lovely fursuit head. He's pretty cute. But anyways, needless to say, Rue, why a fox? Why red? Why cookies? I don't know. Anywho, so I was probably the kid that, got picked last in recess. And I was also, I don't know, I kind of was the alone kid that hung out with the weird D&D people that rolled dice and, I don't know, did LARPing and stuff like that. I don't know. I didn't really do that much LARPing. Anywho, so for Rue, Rue wants to make sure that everybody feels included. And so anytime that I go to a fur meet or I go to a convention, you'll probably see me hovering around the person that's alone. Because I want to make sure that that person knows that they are welcome here and that they are part of this community as well. And so that's just, I don't know, that's just my particular character and what I strive to do. And I do become a different person. I've worn, I know that I gave the advice that you need to keep your fur and ears away from work. However, I have worn my suit at work before, specifically around Halloween, when that's more okay for you to be able to do something like that.
Furries love Halloween.
I bet.
It's their night.
But the one thing that I noticed is when I put on one thing that my coworkers told me is you are a completely different person. 100%. When you put that suit on, I did not know who you were, because I am a different person when I'm in suit. I'm very outgoing, approaching everybody, hugging everybody that I possibly can. And, I guess sometimes when I'm at work, I'm very, very business, business numbers, yay, stuff like that. So
I know it's taboo. We talked about this before in emails, and I don't know if we decided on this or not. It almost feels like questions I don't care that much about anymore, but the sex idea of of furry fandom, is that talked to death? Is that something you guys want to talk about? How do we feel about this?
It's your podcast.
I'm happy about it. Yeah, I'm no problem with it.
All right, cool. I just know that there's been so much discussion of and representation, I guess, of the furry community. This is what it seems like. Yeah. So, I guess how much of the furry fandom, and this is just general, do you think is generally involved? And maybe this is a better question. I don't know if Nuka, if you have research on this or not, but what percentage of the fandom is involved sexually as well in the fandom?
So it's going to depend a tremendous amount on what you define as sexually involved. What we can say is that about 95% of male furries and about 85% of female furries look at furry themed porn. So most furries look at furry themed porn, which to some people they go, yikes. A couple of caveats to that is that take any fan interest and you will find that people look at porn in it. I hate to break it to the anime fans out there, but if you go to an anime image sharing website, type in a little word called hentai, you will find more tentacles than you can shake a stick at.
Oh my God.
I hate to break it to the sport fans out there. If you go to a football game, you will almost certainly see scantily clad women wearing the team colors and dancing for your enjoyment. If you go to a corner store and you buy a Car Aficionado magazine, you will find supermodels draped across $1 million cars. Humans have a natural tendency to imbue their sex lives with their hobbies. So we find that most furries look at furry themed porn to some extent. That is no different from rates of porn consumption that we've seen in any other fandom. Furries take a lot of crap for it because people go, that's just a little bit too weird, right? So anime fans looking at their tentacle porn, that's an acceptable level of weird, but you put ears and tails and you've crossed some kind of line.
Far, yeah.
And part of that stems, by the way, from the fact that we've published a paper showing that the more a fan group strays from sports fans, the more deviant they're perceived as being, and the more uncharitable people are in their assumptions towards them. So the more they assume devious intent, the more they assume there's that either this person is wearing that fursuit because they want to have sex in it, or to lure children, or they assume really insidious things because of that. So yeah, to circle back to the question, most furries imbue their interest in the fandom with some facet of their sexuality. That's because humans in general imbue their hobbies with their sexuality. It's why if you buy video game posters, there's usually some slinky pinup of the character. And yet when you say, this wasn't quite what you asked, but I'll throw it in there because one of my pet peeves. When you define what a furry is, a lot of people are waiting for the shoe to drop. They're waiting for you to mention the sex parties. Furries are defined as people who have an interest in anthropomorphic animal media. ... So where's the part where they have sex in suits? Where's the part where they want to have sex with animals? We don't do that with any other group. We don't say video gamers are people who play video games and masturbate to Lara Croft. We don't do that, despite the fact that there is all kinds of Lara Croft themed pornography on the internet. For whatever reason, furries get the unique box of people trying to cram sex into the definition of what it means to be a furry. So it's present there. And I would say, based on our research, for about 10 to 15% of furries, it would be accurate to say their interest is predominantly a fetish. Like they're there mainly for the porn and for the sex. But for the vast majority of furries, it's a hobby, it's a social group, but also, part of their sex life.
I don't know. I think every single one of my friends in middle school jerked off to that scene in Grand Theft Auto where you pick up the prostitute and then you go to behind a tree and she gives you a blowjob. They're like, whoa, this video game character sucks you off. It's like, what?
But furries are the weird ones, remember?
Yeah,
but furries are the weird ones.
I think I don't know. I think everything's weird. I think any I don't do anything. I don't know why I started a podcast. Literally all I do is read, and if it's not reading, I'm like, well, that's weird. People are like, I like skiing. I'm like, that's not reading at all. I hate that.
I mean, as someone that's been heavily involved with the anime fandom and the furry fandom, sex is there. It is everywhere. We've talked about, we've touched on the hentai. It goes so much deeper than that.
Tentacles, 1,000-year-old lolly goddesses.
It's not even tentacles. There are, oh man, the things I could say. But, you guys, and that's the thing. It's those, they have sex in their fursuits. That's all they do with them. I've seen cosplayers have sex in their cosplays. It happens. It happens way more than people want to say. But in the anime fandom, that stuff's pushed aside. We don't talk about that. You have to go to the special rooms to talk about that. There's whole conventions just for that side of the anime fandoms.
The yaoi conventions?
Yeah, sadly that's gone now, but it's been reborn in other ways. There are hentai cons, basically the adult cons. But the thing is one thing I noticed being in both these groups, furries are open. As Nuka said, furries are open to a fault.
We actually have data on this too. We actually asked a bunch of different fan groups. We didn't even say, tell us what you're into. We said, hypothetically speaking, if a researcher was to ask you about your kinks and fetishes on a scale of 1 to 10, how open would you be? And so bronies, My Little Pony fans were maybe a 6, and anime fans were 6.5, and furries were 9.25 or something like that.
Yeah.
Furries are just let me tell you absolutely everything. So it also gives the impression that furries are way more sexual, just because furries won't lie about it. Furries will just say what they're thinking, whereas a lot of folks feel the need to hide that stuff.
Yeah, and that's where we have a big difference, and I think it also comes from the part of we were outcasts. If we're social outcasts, we don't have people to talk to. But as we get older and mature and start exploring those fun sexual things, hey, we have people we can talk to about it. We have people we can, that kind of understand where we're at. So we're going to talk to each other about it. The other groups don't do that. At least, if they did, it was very hush hush. You're in the room over here, and we're checking your IDs at the door, kind of thing. So
now, I do need to add the whole fact that not every furry in the fandom, which Nuka has clearly stated that not every furry in the fandom is into that particular portion of the fandom. In the not safe for work portion of it. And there's a lot of there's furry drama. Yay, the special word. There's a lot of furry drama that there's some furries out there that want to make sure that our image is 100% clean. And then there are some furries out there that came into the fandom specifically because of mersuits or, furry porn and different things like that. So honestly, everybody came into this fandom at different particular points. Some people, it's all about the sex, and that's it. And it's not necessarily about the community aspect. They just want to get into a fursuit and fuck. Like, that's what they're here for. And you know what? We embrace them just like everybody else.
Yeah, it's
no. Like, hard to know where to go from there.
No. I it's like I have an anecdote, but I'm like, should I share this? Like,
go for it.
I want to hear it.
Well, no. It's not that kind of anecdote, guys. Come on. No.
Stop reading books, Ian.
Fuck! You just took the wind out of my. All right. Have you guys heard of the writer David Rakoff?
No.
He has this essay where he I guess porn conventions were a thing where you could go and meet your favorite porn star. And he has this brilliant line where he was like, where he's just like, I don't know how anybody can like work up the courage to go to these things and like walk up to a porn star with their poster in hand and be like, I'm one of your biggest fans, which essentially translates to, I jerk off to you all the time.
But you know what? I'd be willing to bet that if you were on the street by yourself, most people wouldn't do it. But when you're surrounded by thousands of other aficionados, it frees you up to do it, right?
Yeah.
So it's I don't know what, but yeah. So it's like and honestly, what's so funny to me is the idea of like the furry sex, and I don't necessarily want to. I don't know if calling it a fetish or a kink would even be like the right thing, but that was the thing that made the most sense to me. It was when I found out it was a community that I was like, what? There's more to this? Like I thought we were just going to be watching furry porn for 2 weeks, and I was like stealing myself for this, and there was like so much other stuff to learn about. I was like, oh, this is actually really interesting. Like this is like a whole other thing. So I guess like kind of as we round the corner and come to the end, like maybe that's kind of the answer to the question of like, what do you think people most understand about being a furry? And then like, what are your thoughts on criticisms of furries like generally? Because I feel like even if they get it right, there's still some criticism. And like I myself sitting here before you right now, guilty of this in like our last episode. Even after coming to like, even after learning about it for a week and like definitely feeling differently, but still like super on the fence. Like, I don't know.
There's definitely a lot of misconception. I've honestly, 100% honest here. I've lost friends when they found out I was a furry because of those kind of things.
Yeah.
And honestly, yeah, it sucks. It sucks so much. But at the end of the day, it was, if I can't explain to you or you're not willing to listen of what this is, because to me, it's no different than any other fandom, any other social group like that. We're no different than the anime fans. We're no different than the Star Wars fans. We're no different than the sports fans and all of that. It's just under a different medium. It's under a different umbrella. But at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want a community. We all want to feel like we belong. How we find that differs from person to person. Sex is a thing. Sex happens.
So I'm told.
We're people. Yeah. We're people.
Yeah.
Whatever we do, we're going to make something adult about it. That's just the nature of it.
But I think the beautiful thing is we're just accepting of it. We're just we're more of like, yeah, sure. I have gotten I've gotten a heavy carpet on and done it with somebody. Like I've done that before, and I'm okay with talking about it. It's not a big deal. Now, one thing that I feel like that people misconception that people have is like they automatically see a fursuiter and they're like, ew, that person has sex in their fursuit or something like that. Not every fursuiter is a mersuiter, basically. And I think that also, how many people have had sex in their clothes before. And then they go around and walk around in it. Like, that's disgusting that you would do that. You know, it's the same exact thing, except, you know, I hope you guys know if anybody ever uses a mersuit in public, I mean, for myself, I have a separate suit, like 2 different suits. One is for one thing, the other is for something else. But, you know, a majority, like, we make sure to wash our stuff, just like how you probably go and wash your jizz stained shirt before you go and wear it in public again. So
I haven't washed mine yet. I'm just still waiting for the other shoe to drop on that one.
Honestly, I find the people who fuck in their suits are 10 times cleaner than the other people that don't, because they're like, well, I just wear it for 10 hours and sweat in it, but it's fine.
I've heard the term.
No.
I heard the term musky husky. Is that someone who doesn't wash their fursuit?
Yeah.
That's too funny.
Yeah.
So I guess if I had a sort of final word on the subject, I would say that, again, we published a chapter on misconceptions of the furry fandom. I won't belabor it too much, but I'll say that, when it comes to what it means to be human, when we see something we don't understand, we tend to make 2 assumptions about it, right? Someone's being weird. Why are they being weird? It's a sex thing, or that person is seriously psychologically damaged, right? You see a person doing a weird thing, they're either getting off on it or they're not all working there. Typically, the more deviant the behavior, the more unusual the behavior is, the more we assume broken person or sex thing. So that's kind of our default, right? You know, furries are guilty of doing it to other groups as well. If I had never seen a My Little Pony fan before, and then I saw a person talking about how much they loved My Little Pony and wearing all their My Little Pony stuff, I'd be like, that's a person who's masturbating to cartoon horses. That's just what we do as humans, right? When we don't understand it, we try to explain it. We're natural psychologists. We want an explanation for it. And typically the weirder it is, the weirder the explanation has to be. So furries take a lot of shit, I think, because it's just so outside the normal. A person walking around in a fursuit, you assume that person has to be either delusional and think they're actually an animal when they put that on, or they're getting off to this somehow.
That's a bad person.
Right.
Bad person.
So we assume those sorts of things. And I guess if I was to sort of correct it, I would say, well, stop and look at your own hobbies and take a step back and realize that if they weren't mainstream, if they weren't socially accepted, how friggin' weird would your hobby be? If you like football, a bunch of grown men are going to inflate a pigskin and then throw it around while hitting each other. Man, you know, some of them are getting off to that later on tonight. Like the assumptions you make of, man, they must be damaged in the head. And I guess with enough concussive impacts, maybe some of them are.
They probably are.
Man, what are they doing in the locker room?
Right? How much ass slapping goes on in the locker room after that? Right? You can take any interest that's not mainstream and just immediately jump to it's a sex thing or it's a damaged person thing. And I guess just don't take for granted the fact that whatever your interests are, you're kind of lucky that they're mainstream, that you can get away with wearing it in public, you know, wearing a t-shirt, wearing whatever you're a fan of in public without people assuming that about you, because furries are not really any different. It's just they're different enough that people jump to those assumptions about them.
That makes a lot of sense. Honestly, guys, thank you so much for just an incredible conversation. I know we've brought you along on this wild experiment that we've been on, diving into your world. But I just hope that you know, at least like for what it's worth, we did it for science. Do you guys like what I did at the end there? Both of your names.
At first, I thought that for what it's worth thing was like an accident, just a clever little. And then you threw for science, I'm like
yeah. All right, and so honestly, thank you so much. Before I let you guys go, if you did listen to our first episode, you know that I came up with a fursona. Yes. And I drew my fursona today. I took the first step. I'm not an artist, so don't judge me on that level. But this is the world premiere.
What's the name? Awesome. What's the name?
Hatchie.
Aww.
Hatchie.
That's adorable.
I love it.
And it's a Florida panther. So
so now what does that say about you? What does the Florida panther say about you?
He's endangered. He's rare.
Yeah, you probably haven't even heard of me.
He's the hipster furry.
Yeah, mine's actually like I tried to put some symbolism into it. I'm from Florida. I used to. There's like I think it's an old tribe, an Indian tribe called Loxahatchee, and there's a river named Loxahatchee. So this is like the Hatchee part of that, and it's a river I used to kayak down a lot with my friends in high school. So it's like kind of some like childhood memories in there. So
that would 100% pass as a legitimate fursona to the furry family. You could go to FurryCon with that. No furry would ever question it or think anything about it. Like, yep,
done. You're in.
Legit.
Let's go.
Love it. All right. I'll see you guys at the next FurCon.
I think that's your guys' next jump. You need to go to a fur convention. Megaplex is in Florida, right?
Yeah. They're close to Megaplex. They're close to
Furry Fiesta.
No,
we're not in Florida anymore. I'm in New York, and Ian's in Boston. So yeah, we got
Midwest Fur Fest, Chicago.
Oh yeah,
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, there's the New Hampshire FurCon, I believe. There's a couple over that.
If you want to cross the border, you can go to Fernal Equinox in Toronto.
Oh, I want to do that. I want to go to the Canadian one.
I'll see you there if you're there.
Oh, cool. When is it?
Ian's never going.
Fernal Equinox is in the spring. It's like March or April, so
it'll be next year.
Yeah.
Okay. I was hoping. No, I thought it might be soon because we do sleepovers. So I would love to do a FurCon sleepover.
I would too.
And be like, yeah.
That you're probably your best bet. Crossing fingers, COVID doesn't turn it off again. Would probably be Midwest Fur Fest in Chicago, which is normally at the end of November.
And then we just need to get you guys into a fursuit and give you that opportunity to step into another character. Would be amazing. So
I'm down. I'm 100% down. It sounds
Same
like
here,
a blast, honestly. Oh, you know what's interesting? Maybe just worth noting is I was the high school mascot for 1 month, so I have some experience
you
putting on a suit.
You would be surprised how many furries. Yeah, it's the mascot is a cover for being a furry.
Here's a random fun fact. Like Shaye, my roommate when I first moved to Gainesville for college was Alberta, the Florida Gator girl mascot.
Oh wow!
And I took the suit out for what do they call it? Not a test drive, a spin drive.
A spin.
One of the things.
Spin cycle. That's what you want.
Cycle.
I think first want to avoid the spin cycle typically.
If it's on delicate, you're fine.
Hand wash only.
But I took it for a spin and had some fun with it and then like brought it back and put it in the thing. And she came home the next day and beeline from her room. She's like, "Did you put on the suit?" I'm like, "No, I didn't put on the suit. What do I look like? Like I'd wear the girl alligator suit? Get out of here!" And she was like, "It's a felony. It's a federal offense to take the suit." And I was like,
"That can't be true."
Holy shit! Is it really? Well, I guess I don't know. Like, if it's a public university, is it? Like, I don't know how it works.
She's just trying to scare you.
I don't know. It worked. I was like, "Oh fuck!"
But I want to ask you, how was that experience? Like going out in that particular suit?
Were you treated differently? Yeah.
Yeah, were you treated differently?
Because it was Alberta, the alligator, it was like just like the mascot. It was, as soon as I kind of showed up at the place where I took the suit, I was the life of the party, and it was a blast.
That's what wearing a fursuit is in public, by the way. Suddenly, every single eye is now on you.
And you were you were the center of attention, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
I can't believe I can't believe I forgot about that during this experience. I was like, "Oh wait, yeah, I do have an experience.
I've done this before.
I broke the law."
Tuck that back in the back of his brain. He's like, "I never want to think about that again."
Courney, if you're listening right now, I did wear the suit. What are you gonna do about it?
And the FBI is on its way right now.
I mean, I get a knock on the door tomorrow. Come with us, sir.
This is a crime. You've worn this suit. But you'll sit in front of the judge. They'll make you wear that suit to see if it fits you. As evidence.
Exactly. Someone named Hatchie gave an anonymous call.
Who could it be?
Hatchie.
All right, guys. Well, thank you all so much again. This has been incredible. I know we have like a lot of different places that we're representing here. Do you guys want to take turns doing a quick shout out for science and for what it's worth?
Sure, yeah. If anyone's interested in, I kept talking about the research. If you want to see it for yourself, if you go to Furscience, FUR all one word.com, you can check out all of the research we've done in the past. We have links to all of our research data there. All of our publications are there. If you're interested in being part of the research yourself, or you can follow us on Twitter at Furscience. We have a YouTube channel. We've got all the other social media, Facebook page, so you can check us out.
If you are interested in learning more about the furry fandom, we have a library of almost 200 episodes that we have done in For What It's Worth on every single topic that you can think about, that you're interested in, maybe like creating a fursona, or, if you're interested in learning more about what it takes to be a fursuiter, or how to connect with or go to your first furry meet, or go to your very first convention. We have that in our podcast. So please feel free to look at furwhatitsworth.com.
And it's fur, F-U-R,
Amazing,
what it's worth.
F-U-R. Good clarifying point. Yeah.
Right. Well, I don't want to belabor the point too much, but thank you guys again so much for coming and chatting with us. It was a blast. I had a great time.
And thank you for doing your homework on it. It's easy to do these sorts of appearances for people who actually take the time to learn about it and don't just walk up and say, "So what's with the fursuit sex thing?" That's question one.
Like you did an amazing job doing the research.
Thank you. You guys should answer from now on where they're like, "What's up with the sex?" Like, yeah, I have sex. Are you jealous?
Are you offering?
What do you not have sex? What are you, a loser that doesn't have sex? Get out of here.
I like that.
Yeah. I'm going to an orgy and it's going to be fucking awesome. Get out of here, you no sex loser.
We're going to go to a fur pile.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh my gosh.
All right, guys.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Ooh, all right. So we are back. That was an amazing hour and a half conversation. I'm here, of course, with the incredible Ian Rowe. Ian, say hi.
I can't believe you held your breath that entire hour, 36 minutes.
That has to be a record.
When we played it back, you were like, watch me hold my breath for an hour and 36 minutes. And I was like, I don't know. And you did it. I'm so impressed.
Yeah, check that out. Guinness, just let me know if you need any of my personal information to make it official.
We have it on tape. If you want to watch the entire hour and a half of Shaye holding his breath, all you have to do is become a Patreon subscriber. You can go to patreon.com/GamfreyEducation. But enough of that. It's time for this. It's time for How Brain, How Feel.
How brain, how feel. How brain, how feel. How brain, how feel.
I can't believe I held my breath for that entire song. That's so much more impressive than your thing.
Okay, well, welcome to How Brain, How Feel, our favorite end of camp recap to see if and how our minds have changed or if we've just become more convinced of our initial preconceptions. And honestly, Ian, I know how I feel about this. I feel like the listener probably does as well, because especially how I came out of week one. But I'm really curious, like how have you changed from the beginning of this camp, from Ignorance in a Bottle, last episode? I feel like there was like some heat coming from you in regards to the furry community.
Oh,
yeah, how are you feeling about it now?
There's a scene in Stanley Kubrick's, How I Learned to Love the Bomb, or I can't, what movie I'm talking about,
I have
right?
no idea what
Where
you're
the hatches open up and he's riding the nuclear bomb out and he's waving the cowboy hat and he's like, yee-haw! And they drop the bomb and it explodes. My preconceptions got fucking nuked, my friend. They got nuked. They got straight up nuked.
Is that a reference to our expert Nuka or something else?
It is now. Yep. That was my...
Brah, brah, brah.
Whatever that noise is. Lots of it. All right.
So Ian? How have they been nuked? Walk me through it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so funny because I think I spent a lot of this time, that was my brain this week. How I feel. Fuck me. So, all right, more or less. I'm getting serious now. Ooh, here it comes. I feel like I spent a lot of this week really, so much fucking cognitive dissonance, honestly. I think more cognitive dissonance than I have felt with previous games, where I was just like, I want to criticize it so bad. But then I was like the voice in the back of my head was constantly just like, well, like, why? Like, as soon as I found out, it wasn't a sex thing. I was just like, oh, it's just like a fandom of anthropomorphism. Like, you can't. That's not a thing. You can't do that. That's breaking the rules. And I was just like, well, what rules? In what sense does it merit criticism? Like, in this instance, like, what function does criticism serve? And it's weird because, like, having been an English major in college, like, there's this like idea I think that derives from like the Frankfurt School that the point of cultural criticism is to like find an objective morality amongst like a sea of subjectivity. So like freedom interest, I don't think anybody can deny is like, it's a very subjective interest, but it's just like, well, then like, what's the point of like criticism? I think a lot of times we're looking at things through the lens of like, well, what's the downside? How is this actually kind of like detract from like, I don't know, like our goal toward like a more like free society? And, it's just like, I think my thing now is like, freedom isn't weird. It's just like unexpected. And it's just like kind of when you think about the march toward like human progress, which is ultimately like a long-term project of human liberation. You don't. I left out the part where people were going to wear animal suits, and it's just like, and that's what it's just like kind of like it's just that it's unexpected, and I'm like, I guess that's like part of it. And if we're thinking about social norms, and if we're thinking about like expression and what that entails, and how broad that is and can be, it's like. I don't think it's any secret to anybody who listens to the show that I'm like super like break down the system, man. Like, we gotta fight the system, man. I couldn't come up with something better the second time, whatever. But it's just like, I don't believe in like, I'm not a proponent of like violent revolution. I think, you can't even protest in this country without getting shot with rubber bullets and tear gassed by the police. So I'm a believer in like what I would call, pun not intended, like soft revolution. Like I think that revolution will come from people like refusing to conform and participate in social norms. And I mean, that's what furrydom is, essentially. It's like a new type of expression. It's a new way to explore like selfhood and being and identity. And it's not that it's weird, it's just that it's unexpected. I'm like, I didn't see this coming. But I get, it's here and fuck it. It's like, now that I've spoken to them, I'm like, fuck it. It's kind of, it feels weird even to like let go of this notion of like, I don't know, furrydom, but like, yeah, I guess it is kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, honestly, man, it's so exciting and cool, really. It's really cool to see you change and come around. Cause like, I was right there with you. I remember like an ignorance in a bottle. I was just like, yeah, this is fucking weird. And it's a sex thing, right? And we're like, yeah, it's a weird sex thing. We're like, okay, well, it's not a sex thing. And it's not weird anymore. It's just like such a fascinating change, I think, from both of us, even though like we kind of came at it at different paces. So I'm happy to see you on the not fuck furries bandwagon now, which is...
If anything, I'm like, yeah, like, dude, I'm pro furry. Like, more furries. I want to see furries in the streets when it's not Anthrocon. Like, I want to be in the grocery store and I want some people in fucking furry costumes. I want it to proliferate. Because I do. I think it's just, like, I do believe in this idea of like soft revolution. And it's funny, like, I have to like frame it through like this like utopian worldview of like, at first I was like, no, this distracts from like this goal of human progress. And I'm like, actually, like, no, I guess it's like included. It's part of it because it's just like, again, it's like challenging norms in terms of like expectations of what is, I guess, like allowed in the social sphere. And it's funny because I talked about this in part 1. It's like, anytime we get like this new thing, we have this new conversation about like, all right, like what of this is okay, what isn't, like what are we gonna cherry pick out so that it can assimilate and like acclimate and just become part of like the everyday tableau of life. So yeah, like I don't know, like I like this. I like that it exists because then we get to have these sorts of like conversations. And I mean, like, honestly, like more power to furries for being able to take what feels like a lot of like criticism. And like I was guilty of that as well in part 1.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super interesting to see how you change, man. And your question of criticism is really fascinating. I think what like came out of it for me was this.
I was going to ask. Let the record show. I was going to ask next, but I didn't. You kind of had to like give yourself the old handoff there, and it was coming.
I'm used to giving myself a lot of hand work, so it's okay. Yeah. So I guess my like biggest, like the thought that I'm thinking of here at the end of the camp is just like kind of what fandom is generally. And like, I don't know if like any fandom is right for me. And I'm trying to think like, okay, well, am I overlooking something? Like, am I maybe inadvertently part of a fandom that I'm not thinking of right now? And I was like, okay, what do I really like? And like, is there like any like kind of cultural phenomena that I'm like a big fan of? I'm like, well, actually, I love like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and like I've watched it all the way through a few times. It's like, but do I like, would I take any part of liking that show and like tell people that so that they like associate me somehow with that show? And it's like, I mean, I mention it, like if it comes up, I say like, yeah, I like that show as well, but like it's not something that I think what I would include as part of my identity. And I guess like that's the difference. And like same thing with like bands that I liked. Like, I mean, I would definitely say like in high school, me definitely did that, you know, where I would talk about the music I liked was kind of like my fandom. I was like, I love these bands, and like you can associate me with these bands. And in fact, please do. Like, I want you to think of, when you think of me, I want you to think of Chevelle and Tool and Rage Against the Machine and a ton of other terrible music. Now, actually, well, I love Rage Against the Machine. I always will. But so I'm just wondering, like, okay, is that, I don't know, is that a fandom somehow? And I don't really think it is. Like, I think if anything, for me, I don't know if this counts as a fandom. I know you and I talked about this a little bit before, Ian, but like, I don't know. Obviously, like we're podcasters. Am I like a fan of podcasting or of podcasts? Like, I don't listen to that many podcasts, shamefully, but like I make them. So am I a fan of that? Or is that just like, I don't know, like something I do? I don't know. Because it's definitely part of my identity. Like being a podcaster, being a musician, those are like big identity markers for me. But is that like the same part of fandom? And like, that's just what I'm not really sure of. I'm leaning towards no. I don't know if there's an answer for this, you know, in the remaining minutes of the episode. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's like weird because it's, I don't know what it is. I feel like you get to a point where like in fandom where like in being isn't enough for you. Like you have to do it, you know? And like, I'm like, what's the difference? I guess, I don't know, like between being a furry and being like in a Chevelle cover band, you know?
Right.
Like,
yeah. No, I think it's a great point. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe we'll touch on this on a future episode or maybe a future sleepover.
I would love, honestly, like this conversation is just making me want to do a fandom camp because, you know, and like I joke about this a lot in our show. I feel like this is like a gag that keeps reoccurring. Like, do I like anything? Like, I don't even know, but like, it's funny because like, and like I've seen a meme or something that was floating around like, you know, why do you have to criticize everything? Let people enjoy things. It's like, well, I enjoy criticizing things. Let me criticize everything. And it's just like, that kind of is my hobby. And like, I don't know. Because I like criticism because like it's at least it feels and like that's its own kind of fandom, right? Because like then I'm not just like enjoying, I'm doing, and that's what criticism is. Criticism is a way to like engage with the art in or the entertainment or like just the culture in general that kind of puts you in a position to like I don't know, maybe be in a position to help drive the culture and not just participate in it. Where it's just like, you know, like we're going this way. What if we just redirected a little bit this way? Like, couldn't, if we, you know, did more of this, did less of this, couldn't the world become kind of a better place? And I think, yeah, like that's maybe kind of at the heart of like what we're doing with this in its own weird way where, you know, like we come to the end of this camp and we're like, hey, maybe if there was more, I don't know, engagement, like good faith engagement with people that like you're confused by, there would be like, I don't know, like more empathy with each other and more, you know, it feels corny to say it, but like, you know, more human freedom. And I think that would entail like more happiness for everyone, you know, like you're happier because it's not confusing and new and weird and like, I don't get this. You're like, oh, I get it now. And like, I'm comfortable with its existence. And then another person can express themselves more freely and then they're happier. So like, I don't know, that was a tangent. I'm feeling tangential today, baby.
It's the coffee. But you know, thank God for it because that was a really beautiful point, Ian.
Thanks.
Honestly, I don't know a better way to end the podcast, so I won't try. So thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you at the next one.
Okay. Bye. Big special thanks to our guests this week, Nuka or Dr. Plante from furscience.com, and to Rue and Sammy Southpaw from the For What It's Worth podcast. To hear interviews like this one in their entirety, become a monthly supporter and join our Patreon, where you'll get access to those and tons of other fun goodies.
Here at camp, we love talking over great music. If you want to hear some amazing music, then go ahead and follow our playlists on Spotify.
We hope you enjoyed this camp as much as we did. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and everywhere else. Stay tuned for our next camp, where we do the thing that you're gonna love.
Next time on Camp Re-Education. Help, I'm trapped in this well! Save me, Mr. Ian! Mr. Ian, help me! Help me!
I'm gonna give you my Venmo. I'm gonna give you my Venmo, and then as soon as you make that transaction, I will help you, all right? But it's gonna be $25.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Ian. Thank you. Okay.